with Kevin Gallagher. I'm, of course, your host, and it's a pleasure to have you here, well, you know, at the news desk. And whenever I'm sitting here at the news desk and I got a telephone in front of me, it means that my guest is usually pretty far away. And in this case, we have, I don't know if it would be Colonel, I know it's a Joint Chiefs of Staff Action Officer, retired Al Cuppett. How do you explain that ranking so people understand?
That happens to be a civilian rank equivalent to Colonel, GM-14, right.
So you're equivalent to a Colonel in the Air Force, correct?
A Colonel in military period, or a Captain in the Navy when you talk about pay grade and time in service, 31 years.
Okay. And you were in 31 years, and you get a lot of very accurate information about what's going on in the world and what will soon be happening, and that's one of the reasons why I have you on. You had talked extensively about the lady, I think it was in Phoenix, Arizona?
Right, Sky Harbor Airport, right.
Yeah, and this whole thing that happened with her being detained, arrested, whatever word you want to use, you've done a lot of research into that whole issue. So let's start there, now that we know who you are and we have some background about you. What is it that people really need to know about this issue, and why should it concern them?
What it is, we've got foreign cops operating in our country, and we've just proved it with this incident in Phoenix.
Okay,
this situation...
No, go ahead.
Back in 2001, I have a friend of mine who's a speaker, who's Jewish. She was approached by a Navy intelligence officer and said, "We found your name on a list. We found, we've intercepted a communique." And understand this, folks, that as a command and control communications intelligence inspector for 30-some years total service, I know something about communications. And these foreigners operating in our country have to use the commercial communication systems, and they're subject to intercept by some of our good guys, okay?
Right.
So they intercepted this, and they told her that her name was on a list, and she said, "What should I do?" I said, "Well, you're on the red or blue list, so don't panic. First thing, don't panic." 2 weeks later, she called me, another colonel called me and said that this lady had been contacted by the FBI. Two agents came to her and said, "Listen, we believe like you do, but we've intercepted a message whereby there's a plan out there by somebody to put international cops at the airports, UN cops at the airports, and/or foreign cops, okay, at the airports, and when things get right and there's a Muslim riot and uprising," I'm quoting the source, okay?
Right.
"The Jews will flee to the airports, and these guys will be there specifically to pick the Jews up fleeing the country."
Wow.
Okay, now, got a friend of mine who came from Atlanta 2 years ago. She came in from South Africa. She came through Atlanta, and sure enough, they had a foreign guy there, and then the guy was looking at the screen. It was a polarized screen, and he said, "You didn't tell me you were a pastor." She said, "Well, you didn't ask me." "Well, you didn't tell me you were a Jew." "Well, you didn't ask me."
Right.
Pulled her off and put her in a room, and they interrogated her some more. And finally, one of the Spanish guys who was of Hispanic origin said, "Look, she hadn't done anything, just let her go." And she said, a soldier came in a gray uniform and took me and let me go out the door. I said, "We don't have any soldiers in gray uniforms, okay, first of all." And that was the giveaway that we had detention cells at Atlanta Airport. She saw a big steel door in the room where she was. Now, here we have the story of Carol Ann Goetbaum of South Africa. She was a Jew from South Africa.
Right.
She reported in a little bit late. Her plane hadn't taken off, but she was scratched from the flight. Obviously, she was probably going to miss her connection to South Africa. She started screaming and hollering. Evidently, the TSA guys had her handcuffed by someone.
Right.
Can't tell the origin of those, but she was put in a holding room, as they called it. In other words, AKA alias detention cell, right?
Right.
She was handcuffed, and within a few minutes, one of the fellows I talked to at a restaurant said the next report he heard was she was dead within 10 minutes. She was
dead within 10 minutes.
She was screaming in the cell. Still there, Kevin?
Dead within 10 minutes of being loaded into
the
cell?
guy I talked to, he said one of the reports he heard that she had died within 10 minutes of being put in the cell.
Wow.
Screaming the whole time. And a Navy SEAL wrote me an email and said, "Listen, the only way a person can choke themselves to death with their handcuffs in a cell is if somebody takes them and with the handcuffs behind their back, pulls their arms out of joint and wraps their arms around their neck, okay, up over their head."
Right.
So this woman was murdered, and at the same time, I got a report from a lady who had two people come into her ministry and said that they'd just been to the Phoenix airport about a month before. This was, I think it was August 29th this happened.
Okay.
And they told her that they had been through the airport, Sky Harbor Airport, and seen foreign policemen in black uniforms who are not Americans patrolling that airport. Now, we had a guy, a sergeant, I think his name was Andy Hill, of the airport police. He's trying to explain that this woman died. Now, he may know how she died because they know these guys are operating, because when I spoke in Phoenix, the city of Phoenix, not the airport, but the city of Phoenix in 98,
right,
a policeman came up to me on the break and said, Al, we've got 12 Russian cops on this police force, and it's 12 more than we want, but we can't do a thing about it.
Now, how long ago, are you talking about with these Russian cops and these guys running around in these differently colored uniforms? How long ago is this?
Well, the one in 98 was when the cop told me they had 12 Russian cops on the Phoenix police force.
Okay.
Now, they've been hired by community police. They've been hired on the cops on the street, and they've been hired under a program for Project Harmony. This is appropriated money that they hire these people, and they're not hiring American cops, though. See, they didn't tell us what they were doing. They didn't tell us that they weren't hiring American cops. Oh, they may have a place here or there where they hired some American cops, but there was $250,000 under those three programs that I've counted funded, starting back in 95 or so, to hire these foreign cops.
Wow.
And under Executive Order 12919, which Clinton said in 94, June the 3rd, I think he signed it. It was issued on June the 7th from Europe when he took it over there to visit the Pope. The thing was staffed, and it says in there that you can, under times of emergency, you can hire experts to help out, all right?
Right.
But they can't be full-time American government employees. Why? Because the Americans go by the Constitution.
Exactly.
They have hired foreigners, and they have an executive order out there that's never been countermanded by Congress, and they're hiring these people. And I can give you scuds of examples of foreign police. I got a guy in Texas who was at a Starbucks, and he saw three big women in black uniforms with pistols, and he said, "What are you doing here in Texas with state police on your uniform?"
Huh.
They got up and went out. He went and had the tag numbers on their Chrysler vans checked out, and the sheriff come up and said, "Unissued."
Unissued.
So 3 weeks later, he saw four more big bruising guys, big guys, and these foreign cops, when they're operating where we've known they're big, they're over 6 feet, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "We're just doing here in Texas with these state uniforms on." And they got up and went out. Now, the reason that makes a problem, folks, is because Texas has the Texas Rangers and the Department of Public Safety, or the Highway Patrol. We have nobody in Texas known as the state police.
Right.
That's the problem. And in our book, America Sold Out, in Chapter 6, I delineate and list all the states and the names and logos and badge numbers and so forth, and the names of these cops and where we found them operating.
Huh.
Okay, and we got them in Illinois. They're called the Secretary of State Police.
Right. Now, with the research that I've done, approximately 20% of our military in this country are foreigners. They're being brought into our military. And even Hitler he used foreign troops, but he didn't even use aggravated felons.
Well, that's right.
And we're using aggravated foreign troops, aggravated felons into our military that are foreigners. Hitler didn't even do this.
Well, we've got a problem with Blackwater. Blackwater's operating with private security guards. The problem with that is private does not mean Americans. Private does not mean American security guards, okay?
Right.
They have foreigners here, and they had them in 1988 in Atlanta, Georgia, when the Red Dog Strike Force went out to a demonstration and jerked 7 women's arms out of joint. And the lady told me, and her name is Brenda Roberts, she said, "You can use my name, Al." She said, "Those guys spoke a foreign language behind those masks."
Mm-hmm.
That was in 88 when Bush was running this. G.H.W. Bush was running the shadow government under Ronald Reagan.
Right, right. Now let's get back to this woman at the airport.
Right.
We have this whole thing being set up. Now, why was she, why would this woman be killed to begin with?
First of all, she was Jewish.
Okay.
Secondly, she was screaming and hollering. And you got to understand the mindset of foreign policemen. They are not our nice guy cops that you and I run across doing radar checks on the highway.
Right.
Okay? Folks, you got to get real here. These people are operating here packing Makarov pistols. There's 700,000 of those pistols were shipped in 1994 by Clinton administration, and they were issued to these guys. And there's also cops in Denver, which are called the International Crimes Enforcement Police. And the cop told me they're here, Al, and they got federal ID cards. They got diplomatic plates on their cars. They're wearing black uniforms, and they have Makarov pistols on their hips. And so they are here.
Now, these pistols, I think, were handed out because they served in the first Gulf War. Is that correct?
No. See, the Soviet order battle requires the prepositioning of supplies and equipment prior to offensive operations.
Got it.
There was a broadcast on about the 13th of December. I heard it myself. Clinton had authorized the import of 700,000 Makarov 9mm times 18 pistols. I said, sidearms for the UN peacekeepers. Sure enough, 4 years later, in 1998, a cop walks up to me and says, we got Slovenian guys here with SLV on their cars. They got black uniforms, just like the 1994 National Guard letter said that Slovenians would be employed as Partnership for Peace in Colorado. So those guys are in Colorado. We've got them in Texas. We've got them now. We've got a woman murdered down there, and a guy named Ed Parker wrote in from Cornville, Arizona. He sent an email to the newspaper, and he said, as of today, when this woman died, flying or trying to fly just got inherently dangerous in the United States, and it wasn't due to some nebulous foreign terrorism threat. Somebody's in the airports, and somebody murdered that woman. They said, well, she's a drug addict. The follow-up, the spin was, the piling on was, well, she's a drug addict. No, she was 45 years old. She had a husband and 3 children.
Right.
She wasn't a drug addict.
And the thing is, you can't choke yourself to death. What happens is, at best, you're going to pass out, and the human body's like, oh, the dummy tried to, cut off your air supply, and the body just resuscitates itself.
Right, that's right.
You can't do it. So something else had to happen there.
Absolutely, and that's why this is what the Navy SEAL said. First of all, she shouldn't have been handcuffed in the cell with her hands behind her back.
Right. Because you can't lift your hands up behind your back. If you got your hands behind your back, folks, like I'm demonstrating, right now, folks, if you're watching this show, whether it's over Comcast cable or on YouTube, try putting your hands behind your back like you would be handcuffed. Now try to lift your arms up. You can't lift your arms up high enough to put them over your neck. You can't do it by yourself.
But you can if you got help.
If you got help and they do what they do and they pull the arms out of the sockets, yeah, they can do it that way, but you can't do it by yourself, and you know that as well as I do. That's
why the Navy SEAL sent me the email and said that can't possibly be.
I mean, if people are trying that at home, they're feeling a little bit of pain in their shoulders and their arms right now.
Right. Well, now we know why she was screaming.
Right. Right.
That's right, this poor woman, yeah.
Now, what's this about the Kitty Hawk? Because what happened was you sent me an email several weeks ago, if not a month and a half ago, that I guess one of your people had revelation that this was going to happen.
So my buddy had a vision of
I've sent this email out to several people that know me who are on my crew, and they can vouch that they got it before this incident happened. So why don't we review that and review what the actual incident is, because I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about it.
It was in 2005. My buddy had a vision of the carrier task force headed by an aircraft carrier with 3 submarines and about 12 other ships operating, 11 other ships operating, and this would be a carrier task force in the Pacific, and they were they had a missile attack on the left-hand side, on the port side of the ship.
Wow.
Now, the Chinese are running these, and the Iranians also are running these Lynx missiles that are supersonic sea skimmers. There is no defense against a sea skimmer supersonic. We have a defense against a sea skimming missile as long as it's subsonic.
So let me stop you for a moment. You're talking about a missile that's going to fly a few feet above the water, faster than the speed of sound.
That's right.
Yeah, so how do you stop something like that? How do you even detect it on radar?
There's no way to stop it. If you have a subsonic one, you can throw lead at it, throw lead at the thing and hope you hit it at the last minute, right?
Right.
But it's supersonic, there's no warning. It just comes boom. And it's gonna obsolete the aircraft carrier.
And being supersonic, it's going to hit you before you even hear it.
Right, and if it's got a tactical nuke tip on it, you're going to lose a carrier. And he saw this thing happening in 2005. I believe I got it on my hard drive. And now we find a report. Now I believe it was all the way back in January when this happened. But that was 2 years after 2005. Okay. Right. And some of these Chinese Song submarine, we call them Song.
Okay.
The diesel-powered diesel-electric sub. It surfaced right near the Kitty Hawk, right in the middle of the task force on maneuvers.
Wow.
On an exercise, and it pops up.
Huh. Like, hi, here we are.
Right. And so let me tell you what else happened. In 2002, I think it was, I got to look at the record, but in the Sea of Japan, the Kitty Hawk was surprised by a flanker-fencer sortie, a flanker and a fencer Soviet flying from the Chinese mainland.
Wow.
In the Sea of Japan, flew over, and they didn't see it. They did not see that thing until the battle group CO looked up with binoculars and made visual identification, and the guys scrambled to launch planes on the deck. They took a picture of it from the airplane and sent it to SINCPAC Fleet. They got the fax number of SINCPAC Fleet and faxed it to SINCPAC Fleet and showed our guys scrambling around on the deck. Now,
wow.
I went to a meeting in near Pascagoula, Mississippi, and I talked to a surface warfare guy later, and he said, Al, that happened. He said, I was on one of the ships when that happened. He said, that happened in the Sea of Japan.
Oh, my God.
So what happens, I wrote a letter to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's in the book America Sold Out, and I said, we are no longer a superpower, sir. General Myers, I think it was. I said the Air Force he was the Air Force Chief of Staff, said, we're no longer a superpower when they can spoof our radar.
Right.
And I explained in the letter how that came to pass, how the Clinton administration had allowed that to happen.
Right.
So it happened. In fact, the Bush administration was involved in it, too, the first Bush administration.
Mm-hmm. Because it's my understanding that in the Clinton administration, they sold technology to the Chinese that allowed them to be able to launch nuclear warheads. They didn't have the ability to, they had the nuclear warheads, but they didn't have the ability to actually launch them as far as being intercontinental, like an ICBM.
Well, you know.
Is that true?
That could well be true. I can't deny nor confirm that, but I do know that when these foreign troops came here and these foreign chopper pilots came here, that the choppers that they were operating in had spoofer transponders on board.
Can you please explain what a spoofer transponder
Oh, when
is?
the radar paints the aircraft, when the radar paints the aircraft, it has a counter, we used to call it a pod, ECM pod, right?
Yes.
Electronic countermeasure pod. They used to strap the pods on the bottom of the aircraft, okay, because they weren't integral to the systems, right?
Right.
But now they're built in. Well, the first Russian guys who came here in '93 and were training up there, and the Chinese were training at Westover Air Force Base. The first guy here recognizes that there is a spoofer device on the chopper, right?
Right.
All he does is take it out. He takes it out. They're flying here under treated and open skies, which means they can fly around here without anything you can do about it. The treaty supersedes the Constitution. They have spoofer transponders. What happens is when the civil radar paints the chopper or the airplane, the computer on board immediately sends out a spoof signal, which spoofs the radar.
Which makes the radar think that there's nothing there.
Now, the only thing radar is going to see is a blip. It's going to see a blip for a second, and that's it.
That's it.
Because this is a very top-secret technology. I mean, this is something the United States used in North Vietnam. I mean, we use it with abandon.
Wow.
We could fly over the place and couldn't even see us.
Huh.
But now the Russians have it, and between 1993 and 2000, I think, when the 2002, when the Fencer flanker, I think it was 2000, they have took the equipment back to Russia. They've gone through the key and the algorithms of this thing, this top-secret algorithm. If they didn't have the tech manual to it from the Russians operating in this country, they reverse engineered it, and about 6 years later or 7 years later, they come up with technology to spoof the radar of the Kitty Hawk.
So, I mean, it may sound silly, but you know what? It reminds me of what you're talking about. You go back to the old Star Trek TV series, and they talk about how the Klingons could cloak their ships and they couldn't see them.
Right.
You're talking about the same type of thing where they're basically running cloaked.
Right. That's right. They're running cloaked. Now, that's the kind of thing that we're facing in our country. You know, do you remember back right after the 9/11? They said there was NATO AWACS flying over our country.
Yes.
All right. Let me tell you why they were doing that.
Why were they doing that?
Okay. We've got 32 AWACS planes ourselves.
Okay.
And why wouldn't we use American AWACS planes to fly patrol over the United States?
Good
Why
question.
should we let the NATO do it?
Right.
Very simple. The spoofer technology cannot spoof an AWACS radar, okay?
Okay.
AWACS radar is advanced radar, and so they sent the AWACS over supposedly to watch for terrorists hijacking airplanes, right?
Right.
To further this lie about what happened at 9/11.
Right.
The reason they used the AWACS from NATO, OTAN as it's called in French, OTAN,
Right.
is because if our guys were flying AWACS up in the sky, they would see these planes flying around on the ground that aren't supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
These Treaty on Open Skies aircraft flying around spraying people. I can give you examples of that. And they would see them. So they sent NATO guys here. The NATO guys ain't going to tell because they're part of the conspiracy.
Right.
Okay? That's why they use the NATO AWACS. The question is, why would they do that? Because we got 32 of our own AWACS.
Huh. So it's like
32 that I recall, as I read about.
Yeah, it's like countering what they're already doing.
That's what happened over in Croatia when Ron Brown's plane crashed. There was a NATO AWACS orbiting over there, and we know from satellite imagery that Shelley Kelly was alive on the ground walking around out of Ron Brown's plane. She was a stewardess.
Right.
She was alive and well. They saw her. The reason why you also have transponder packages you can wear in your pocket, right?
Right.
And they saw her walking around and knew she was alive and expected her home. And I got that from the Pentagon, all right?
Okay.
She died of a slit femoral artery. The AWACS plane flying around did not tell our guys out of Brindisi, Italy, the Sea Air Rescue, where the plane was down. They were looking for it over the Adriatic when it crashed in Croatia. And in the meantime, they didn't get on the scene fast enough. There was a chopper landed there, picked that girl up, and she died of a slit femoral artery 3 hours after everybody else did.
Wow.
I talked to Steve Cogswell was the pathologist for the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. I talked to him about that, and him and Colonel Haas and another guy named Gordon Heckel were involved in the autopsy of Ron Brown's head up there and so forth. And all those bodies were cremated at Clinton's directive except Ron Brown.
Okay.
So here's the I brought that in because of the technology on the AWACS. The NATO guys did not tell our Sea Air Rescue where to find that plane until after Shelley Kelly and Ron Brown had been shot with a dry ice bullet. Once that happened, once that was over, our guys came in and found the accident.
Right. The accident in quotes.
Well, yeah, the accident, right. The plane was meekened off course. It's called meekened, M-E-A-C-O-N-E-D, meekening. They meekened him off course with a phony beacon. He hit the mountainside.
Yeah, it went right into the mountain.
Right.
Very interesting. Hey, I got 5 minutes left. Let's cover one other thing I know that you want to get into, and it's, again, a buddy of yours that has very accurate information when he gets revelation.
Right.
He's never wrong.
Right.
And he's talking about vans picking people up. Let's explain this to people for the
we
next
knew
5
we
minutes.
know Steve Quayle reported the smoky vans, these cremation vans operating in the western part of the country.
Yes.
January of this year, I was alerted to him that they were operating. He alerted me that they were operating, and I got a word from 2 different people to take a trip and to be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, 80 miles away, we spotted the smoky convoy, three personnel carriers, not armored, but 3 vans.
Right.
Behind that came the 18-wheeler with the smokestack sticking out of the rig.
Wow.
Behind that was an ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
And behind him was a weapons carrier with a machine gun mounted on it. So we actually saw this convoy at Martinsburg, West Virginia on the 29th of January, and I know why. My prophet buddies told me to be careful, right?
Right.
So now my buddy Bob has had a vision just a couple days ago of gray vans with black trim on them, and these guys are operating, and they've got the red list is out there. There are Christians on that red list.
So can you quickly, in the 3 minutes I have left, what is a red and blue list, and why should people...
The red list, in 96 we discovered that there was red and blue lists with 6.2 million Americans on the list.
Wow.
For pickup, detention, and termination. That's what red and blue is.
Okay.
We know now that there's a green list and a yellow list also.
Huh.
And those on the red list be picked up before unobtrusive preparations for martial law are initiated.
Okay.
Blue list is picked up after martial law is initiated. Now we know it's going to be within 6 weeks.
Okay.
And so there's a list of names out there, folks, and a bunch of you are on those lists.
Wow. Now, how does somebody find out? Is there any way to find out if
No,
they're
you
on this
can't
list?
find out. It's on Homeland Security. The head guys have got the list on their computers.
Okay.
Back when FEMA had control of it, a programmer got in there and found them on the list back in '96.
Wow. And this goes way before 9/11.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. Way before.
And this friend of mine, FBI, got a list from the CIA, found the list of Region 3 Blue List. His name was on it. And he saw his father's name, his son's name, and Richard's name and Jim's name on it, to name a few that he saw.
Wow.
And when I got him on a show like this, on a talk show host, he got on told about how the FBI agent brought him the list. And then about a week, 2 weeks later, he had a chopper fly and land right beside his house and hovered outside his house in a black chopper. And he got his Remington 270 and locked the crosshairs on the pilot's forehead.
Mm-hmm.
They stood there and had a standoff for 4 minutes before the thing flew away. And I got a picture. I had a picture of the helicopter.
Wow. I'd love to see that.
It's up in the sky, and I sent the close one up to Steve Quayle. But most of the time, when you get pictures of choppers, they're far off.
Okay, I got a minute left. How can people get more information, contacting you, whatever, before we go off the air?
I only go by mail. You write me at Box 111, Wolftown, Virginia, 22748.
Say that one more time.
Box
Slower.
111, Wolftown, Virginia, 22748.
Hey, I want to thank you so much. I got to have you back on again. This is some amazing information that you're getting out there, and your buddies that you get the information from, they're just never wrong. So it's
he told me what color orange. He told me what color hat I had.
That's amazing.
I argued with him about the hat till I found it in the box next 2 days later.
Amazing. Hey, Al, thank you so much for
brother.
joining me here on Time Out, and we're out of here. So please tune in again next week to see what it is we'll be talking about. Have a great night.
When this world got me feeling low, I don't need nowhere else to go, 'cause I get all the love I need from 3 little girls in the garden, collecting snails, on the bed, reading fairy tales. I get all